What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. If you thought the war in Ukraine was already complicated enough, well, strap in, because the last 72 hours has been masterclass in geopolitical chaos, military ambition, institutional betrayal, and laws written in the ink of desperation. You've got Ukrainian commanders revealing for the first time ever the details for deep strikes into Russian territory, commonly known as the Kursk incursion, while sweating bullets over betrayal from within their own ranks. You've got a 64-year-old American ex-military officer giving away top-secret intelligence to someone he met on a dating website. And we still don't know if he was duped by a spy or a scammer or a bored housewife with VPN. And then to top it all off, Vladimir Zelensky just casually withdrew from a global anti-landmine treaty, opened the door for dual citizenship, and fast-tracked a war crimes tribunal against Russia. Sounds like a thriller movie, right? Well, it's not. It's only Tuesday or Wednesday, depending from where you're watching. So today, let's dive into the gritty reality behind these headlines, not just what happened, but what it means, and how each piece reveals the fractures, strategies, and sheer absurdities of a war that's unfortunately nowhere near close to be over. You know that moment in a movie where a general slams a map onto the table, draws an arrow into the enemy territory and says, "Let's go, that's the plan." That's basically what happened in Ukraine, except it was not a movie, it was real. And the people around the table had to figure out how to make that arrow actually mean something. Commander Dmytro Voloshyn of the 8th Air Assault Corps was handed one of the riskiest missions in the playbook, an offensive into Russia's Kursk Oblast. 1 month to prepare, foreign territory, limited comms, and a quiet but very real threat of betrayal from his own side. Sounds fair, right? Right? Well, according to Voloshyn, the planning meeting felt more like a fever dream. The arrows drawn on the map were incredible, he said, and not in a good way. He started asking real questions, the kind you would hope any commander would ask before leading troops across a border, such as how do we communicate? How do we move people and gear into the enemy land? How do we train for this in just 30 days? Was the response? Just shrugs and a deadline. You've got until July 20th, so good luck. Very Soviet style of establishing orders, if you ask me. Looks like some Ukrainian commanders, old-timers, still cannot get rid of that mindset. But then something strange happened. Ukraine's top brass actually showed up. General Syrskyi flew in personally after hearing whispers that Voloshyn and his brigade commanders were saboteurs. Not critics, not doubters, actual saboteurs. In wartime, asking questions about logistics can get you labeled as traitor apparently, and not just in Russia. That's how razor thin the trust line is when your own generals think you're plotting insubordination just because you said, "Hey guys, I would like to know how the internet, I know, is going to work in a war zone. Do we buy Russian SIM cards? Do we connect using something else? I don't know." Which honestly is quite understandable, because this was one of the kind operation, the incursion into actual, internationally recognized Russian territory. So no wonder everyone was on high alert, and everyone thought twice before saying or asking anything, because just one single spy or infiltrator could have ruined everything. I guess it is easy to say such things now, after the fact, because at that time, exactly 1 year ago, there was no time for jokes and giggles. But anyways, turns out it was just a bad game of a telephone. Voloshyn was not refusing the mission, he just did not want to lead his men into meat grinder with zero preparation. It makes sense. Syrskyi stayed for coffee, then for drills, and to his credit, fixed most of the logistical nightmares that had Voloshyn losing sleep. But the operation still hit a wall. Just a week in, Voloshyn's forces were rerouted to flank entrenched Russian troops. His unit was under-equipped, undermanned, and facing an enemy whose 810th Naval Infantry Brigade was not only heavily armed, but operating at 96 personnel. Meanwhile, his own brigade was running reportedly on 76 manpower and a prayer. That's not parity, that's self-destruction in slow motion. This was the very first time such details were given to us, and probably that's what made the incursion into Kursk not as successful as many people hoped and anticipated. Nevertheless, the fact that Ukrainians were still able to do it is a massive success. the attention of the Russian military was diverted. They had to relocate some forces. Ukrainians were able to advance in other areas and better defend the others. And just a psychological victory alone boosted the morale of Ukrainian warriors as much as the liberation of Kharkov and Kherson regions years ago. Probably just a little bit more preparation wouldn't obviously hurt, but that's history now. At least Ukrainians did not leak their secret documents on dating website, like some other military representatives did. Let's talk about one such case in our next chapter. Let's shift from combat boots to clown shoes. Meet David Slater, retired lieutenant colonel, civilian analyst at US Strategic Command, top secret clearance, and apparently zero common sense. Because instead of protecting America's most guarded secrets, this 64-year-old genius decided to leak them to someone he met on a, once again, dating website.
An indictment against Slater alleges he shared top secret, and confidential national security information with a woman in Ukraine through a dating app and email. He faces 1 count of conspiracy to disclose national defense information and 2 counts of unauthorized disclosure of national defense information.
And let's take a moment to digest that. This man worked at the command center responsible for US nuclear deterrence. He attended top secret briefings about Russia and Ukraine, and then went home, logged into what we can only hope was not Tinder, and started messaging with a mysterious woman who just happened to be very curious about NATO's plans and what was showing on the special screens at work. "Hey darling, can you please show me some screenshots?" I guess she said. What about Slater? Well, he fell for it. Not only did he accepted it, he conspired to send classified information about Russian military capabilities and US defense targets. He even called her his secret informant love. She replied, "Well, you're then my special hero agent, with love." And I'm not even making this up, it's all in the court filings. And somewhere in Moscow or Kyiv, or maybe just some basement in Moldova, someone is laughing so hard they might choke on their tea. Prosecutors dropped 2 charges in exchange for a guilty plea, but don't worry, Slater's still looking at up to 10 years in prison. His lawyers want to low end of the sentencing range. And why? Because apparently being lonely and desperate is now a defense strategy. But here's the real kicker. We still do not know who this co-conspirator quote-unquote was. Was she Ukrainian? Russian? Just someone fishing for fun and classified maps maybe? Or a fat FSB mustache man smoking cigarette, drinking tea with honey and lemon, and reading on his second screen about the seduction techniques for Americans. We may never know. But what we do know is that this man betrayed his country for what he thought was love, and in doing so, became a footnote in the world's dumbest espionage case. Nothing more to say about him, I guess, for now, so let's now switch our attention to Zelensky, signing, as he called, some urgent laws. Let's talk about it right now. While generals plan invasions and boomers spill secrets on dating apps, Zelensky decided it was time to make history, with a pen this time. On July 15, he signed 3 laws that will shape Ukraine's wartime and post-war future in ways we're only beginning to understand. First, multiple citizenship. Second, a binding agreement for a special tribunal to try Russia for crimes of aggression. And third, and the most unexpectedly, a withdrawal from the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel landmines. Let's start with the citizenship bill. It sounds nice on paper. Ukrainians abroad can keep their ties, fight for Ukraine, and eventually return without being legally torn between passports. It's a move to unite the diaspora, to turn the millions of Ukrainians scattered across Europe, Canada, and elsewhere into a powerful extended nation. But it's also a move of necessity. Ukraine needs more people to work, to fight, to vote, to rebuild. And this is how you make a pitch to those who left. Guys, come back. Or at least stay involved. Legally. Then there is the tribunal. Not a symbolic one, not a gesture for the history books, but a real, functioning legal mechanism to put Russian officials, including Putin himself, on trial for war crimes. The West has already flirted with this idea for 2 years. Zelensky just made it an official law. But let's be real, No one is dragging Putin into courtroom tomorrow. But at least by signing this, Ukraine locked the door behind him. No peace without accountability. No reset without retribution. That is the message. But it's the landmine decision that sends the loudest signal. Ukraine just ditched a global treaty aimed at making wars slightly less horrific. Why? Because Russia never joined it. And right now, being the only party in a war playing by the rules is a luxury Ukraine cannot afford. Imagine you are playing hockey or any other sports, but you are the only team that agreed its players cannot use performance-enhancing drugs. While the opposite team takes those supplements 3 times per day for at least 11 years. Is there a chance for your team to win? Sure, there is, but will it be hard? Well, obviously, most certainly. But in order to level the playing field, either both teams have to agree on not using anything, or just do anything possible to win at all costs. And when your opponent is not being very communicative, well, there is only one choice left. Zelensky made it clear, this is about survival. If anti-personnel mines are what it takes to slow down Russian infantry and protect Ukrainian trenches, then this is what they will use. Moral high ground does not stop a tank, barbed wire and explosives do. So, what ties all of this together? From the Kursk offensive to Slater's betrayal to Ukraine's legal earthquake. It's the death of old assumptions. Assumptions about how wars are fought, how secrets are protected, how international law restrains violence, and how loyalty works in times of chaos. These are not isolated stories, they are chapters in a single narrative. The world is shifting, and the rules we once counted on no longer hold. When a Ukrainian general cannot ask for more time without being suspected of sabotage, that tells you how fragile trust has become inside Ukraine's military machine. When a US officer can sell out classified information to an anonymous stranger online, that tells you how brittle America's internal security really is. When a nation at war throws out a treaty banning mines because its enemy never cared to sign it, that tells you something about the kind of battlefield we are living on now. It's not a chessboard, it is a bar fight with no bouncer inside. The institutions we built, NATO procedures, military codes of honor, treaties and conventions, were designed for a world that no longer unfortunately exists. Both Russia and Ukraine rewrite the manual as it goes. Sometimes elegantly, sometimes chaotically, but always with one eye on the clock and the other on the next drone strike. There is no waiting for perfect options, only brutal calculations between the unacceptable and unbearable. I guess, guys, that's a perfect representation of a phrase, all is fair in war. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. If you want to support my work, there are links down below. For example, Patreon, where you can see these episodes in early access, plus additional bonus chapter in the end. The link is down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims are all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.